Hey guys, today we're going to talk about the 1854 Stealth Hunter by Smith Wesson. So this is a 357 Magnum lever action. It's a modernized, you can see with this M-LOK front rail. It's modernized lever action, and some people kind of think these guns are blasphemy because they're modernized, and they think, if you're in the lever action world, you should get wood grain and you should get all this, and they have all sorts of opinions. I personally think that that's it's fine to appreciate those firearms, and if I did get another lever action, I definitely would look into a more original style lever action. But I had a specific reason for buying it like this, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. So I had purchased about a month before I got this a Colt Python 357, and upon purchasing that, I got an Empire Cage compensator system, which is a compensator that goes on the front of the Colt Python and has a rail system on top and bottom so that you can add an optic and a light. And upon adding that to the Colt Python, it kind of looks like this Space AG, Space Cowboy revolver. It doesn't look like a Colt Python anymore. You can tell when you look at it that it is a Colt Python, but at first glance, you're like, hey, what is that? That's weird. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to get a lever action that had the same cartridge capability as my Colt Python, and I kind of wanted it to look Space Agey, so hence the M-LOK rails and everything that you see here. Microprism optic, but because I wanted that to kind of fit with the firearm that I'd already purchased, that left me with two main options here. Three really. I could go cheap and I could get something like a Rossi, or I could get the two that I actually considered, which were the Marlin Dark series, which is actually the firearm that I really, really wanted, or I could get the Stealth Hunter. And so we're going to talk about the Marlin for a second. The Marlin 357 Dark series was the most recent addition into the Dark series for Marlin. And at the time that they released it, they were their own company. And shortly after they released it, Ruger purchased the Marlin brand. And when Marlin got bought out by Ruger, what ended up happening is that it was almost impossible to get a 357 Dark series. So I was kind of in a time crunch to get one of these. My state has some legislation that's going to make purchasing firearms kind of annoying down the line. So when I decided I was going to go through and get all the firearms that I was looking into getting, I figured it was better just to get the Smith & Wesson Stealth Hunter and try to get it to be what I want it to be, rather than hope that I could get a Marlin Dark series down the line. And I'm kind of glad I did this. I do really like the Stealth Hunter, but as I've looked since I purchased this firearm, I still have not been able to find a Marlin 357 anywhere. Okay, so the reasons why you would want to have a similar caliber firearm to your revolver, kind of simple. I don't have to go out and buy new rounds. Getting a 357 gives you the added benefit of shooting 38 special, so I tend to like the 357 cartridge over something like 44 mag or 45 long Colt. So I went with this. 30-30 is a good option. I didn't like that if I went with the 30-30, I would then have to look for a 30-30 revolver, which I can't name any off the top of my head here while I'm shooting this video. I'm sure they exist, but what I wanted was the 357. So this is how I got this firearm. Okay, we're going to talk about some of the features on this firearm. By the way, if you do happen to see a Marlin 357 in the wild and you are looking at getting a firearm, it's a great firearm. Just because I ended up with a Smith & Wesson doesn't mean that Marlin's off the table. Marlin makes very good products. Other companies make good lever actions as well. So, keep an eye out for those. If you're interested in lever actions, they're still a good option. Okay, so we're going to talk about the features. We're going to do a safety check, and then we're going to show all the stuff that's going on. So chamber is empty visually, physically. We are going to drop the lever on an empty chamber. And it is a tube-fed magazine, so we're going to start there. We're going to talk about all the stuff going on here. So The interesting thing about the Stealth Hunter is that it is a tube-fed magazine, but it has a Henry-style tube, which means I've only really seen this on Henry lever actions, but this little lever here, you can press over and up, and this whole rod comes out the front of the tube, which allows you to load and unload the firearm from the front if you would like. I think that's a cool feature. The Marlin specifically doesn't have that feature. So if you want to unload the Marlin, you're stuck with the other two methods that we're about to mention. Okay, so it's an 8-round tube, 1 in the chamber, so 9 rounds total. You can load it with the loading gate as well. So you can pop around in the loading gate and load it into the tube from there. You can also unload it from the loading gate, which is your second option for unloading. And then the last, which everybody's going to be most familiar with for unloading, is you can cycle the lever over and over and have the extractor extract around, load around, extract around, load around. That might add a little bit of wear onto your firearm, loading and unloading repetitively, but it is probably the fastest way to unload the firearm other than just emptying the front of the gate. Cycling this obviously means that you, if you're not on safe, have the chance to pull the trigger and have a round come out, so make sure that you put it on safe. So now that we're talking about that, we're going to talk about the crossbolt safety. So crossbolt safety is right here, and right now it's on safe, and if I were to press it over here, you can see this red indicates it's on fire, so I'm going to press it there. A lot of people's gripes with this specific lever action are that it does have a crossbolt safety. And so you'll see a lot of reviews where a person goes to shoot the firearm and it doesn't go off. And they go, what's wrong with this? Is my gun broken? And then they remember that it's got that crossbolt safety and they've got to pop it off. It's not common for a lever action to have that style of safety. So just know if you do get the Stealth Hunter, that is something you will have to remember. And it's actually a really nice feature because it adds that level of if I have this at the range, I know it's not going to go off. I'm just going to pop it on there. You can do some other things like dropping the hammer, obviously, and then even having your chamber open can put it in safe. And so, like with most things, if you are at the range and you're going to go down range to check your target, you should have your chamber open anyways, but you can now also pop that crossbolt on and you know that you're safe. So I'm going to pop this back down. We're going to drop the hammer. And speaking of the hammer, we have a very textured, flat hammer, okay? It's very easy to function. And with the safety on, I can drop the hammer, which is another added feature of that crossbolt that we like, because it's not going to slam into your firing pin back here. So I can do that. It kind of goes to the half cock position while that crossbolt's on. The crossbolt's literally preventing it from going forward. I wouldn't do that repetitively, but you can do that. So just don't cock it and fire it constantly and you'll be fine. Okay, so we're going to talk about the lever a little bit. Lever has what I would consider to be a medium-size hand placement. The historic, like old school lever actions, what you're going to see is a thin tube. I'm trying to see if I have anything here that might be a good representation. No, but you're going to see essentially a thin tube represented by these squares here, about 4 squares long, that are kind of rounded at the edge that just barely allow you to fit your hand into them. So you can see here when I fit my hand into this, I have lots of space. So the older ones would only give you about that much space. There are multiple sizes these days, so this is what I would consider to be the medium size. There's a rifle in particular called the Henry Big Boy that has a much bigger loop, and those are pretty large, but they give you a lot of rotation. You can fit mittens or gloves in there if you're somebody who still does a lot of ranch work and you're out on your horse or whatever. But this is a pretty good size loop. You can see that I have put braided paracord on it. We'll talk about that in a second, but even with the braided paracord, I'm able to get my hand in there pretty easily. I'm pretty rest assured that if I have a glove on of some sort of like my regular tactical shooting gloves, I can fit my hand in there still. I wouldn't put big insulated mittens on and try to use this. It might be a little difficult, mostly due to the fact that I'm not going to be able to fit my finger in the trigger well. So we're going to talk about the paracord. Paracord is nice. The lever itself is steel. Okay, very, very solid. And when you are functioning the lever over and over, so if you take this thing to the range and you function the lever, just repeatedly cycling the lever is eventually going to put some wear and tear on your knuckles here, where they make contact with the frame. So that paracord softens that up a little bit. It might leave a little bit of like burn on your hands if you do it too much, because you're still sliding on kind of fabric style texture, and you might eventually wear the paracord down and have to replace it. But it is going to be much more comfortable than slamming your knuckles into steel over and over. Okay, so we're going to talk about kind of the functionality of the lever. I've heard some people say that they have a hard time with this lever, and this is because when you get to about here, it feels like it's open, and then you go forward a little bit, and you have to push it just that much more forward. There's like 2 positions here where it makes contact with the hammer, right there, that you have to get over. And so when you're firing this thing rapidly, if you like to go to the range and shoot quick with your lever actions, you might get tricked a little bit on the functionality of the lever because it's not as crisp as the Marlin would be. So if you're used to shooting Marlins where you rack the lever down and then back really fast, this is going to be slightly more difficult to get used to than something like that Marlin. All right. Okay, so we've talked about the tube, talked about the cross safety, the lever. We're going to talk a little bit about the trigger. Trigger's flat face. It's very nice. It's got that curve at the bottom. When people are talking about curved triggers, the benefit that you have is that you're not going to slide off the bottom of the trigger, and you kind of know where your finger is. And so what people are talking about when they say they like curved triggers is they like that curve because they know when they're at the bottom of the trigger, that's where you get the most fulcrum for your trigger, meaning you can push it less to get more movement. Okay, so flat face triggers, if they don't have a curve on the bottom, you might end up trying to press the trigger here, which means it's going to be harder to press. So if you're down lower, you know you can press it and get a crisper, cleaner trigger pull. So having that little curve at the bottom of a flat face trigger allows you to know that you're at the bottom of the trigger, meaning you're getting the lightest pull that you can get to make the firearm function. So I think that's really nice. I am not particularly well versed in lever actions, so here is something that I have noticed, and I don't know if this is with all lever guns or just this one. So when the lever is down, this trigger wobbles quite a bit. And I don't know if that's unique to this or not. I'm going to have to go test some other lever actions at the store and see what's going on with that. Okay, so we're going to talk about the sighting system. The sighting system comes with a ring on the back, and I really wish I could get this in focus, but it is a hollow ring, and it is very, very easy to obtain the front sight post through it. The front sight post is a fiber optic sight, which means that if you're shooting in daylight, you're going to be able to acquire it very quickly. And when you're looking through it, because it's such a small front or back sight post, you can easily see your surroundings. So if you shoot with both eyes open, as you should, you'll end up being able to obtain your front sight post very easily. And I bought this, and it came sighted in very well. I was able to hit at 50 yards, dead center of the bullseye. You'll have no problem with these. It does have a windage screw right here. If you need to adjust it, use a flat nose screwdriver, and it works just fine. Okay, so I put a Primary Arms SLX micro prism on the top of this, and you can see that it comes with a pick rail that goes from here to here. The Marlin has a pick rail that goes fully to the front of the firearm, and the foregrip is a little longer on the Marlin as well. And that's kind of something I wanted, but this pick rail is long enough for you to put a full-size scope on it. You can put a red dot and a magnifier on it, an LPVO. You can do pretty much anything with this. It's going to fit it. If you're one of those people that likes your red dot all the way forward for some reason, I've seen people do that, I don't know, then you can't really do that on this one. So that is one of the downsides to not having a full pick rail. If you want to put tactical things on it, like a IR laser, so you can do your weird modern cool guy lever action with nods and an IR laser, then it's going to be a little harder to do on this one, but you could manage it. You have M-locks. You can put foregrips on this thing if you want, but just know it's a short pick rail on the top. Okay, so the primary arms optic is a microprism. It's a 1x. I think it's a really good option for pretty much any firearm. If you have a primary arms microprism on a AR-15, for instance, it would work just fine. I think it's really good. The weird thing about microprisms that I'm going to talk about for a second here, and LVPOs, this is something that I've experienced, so I'm going to mention it in this video. And if you guys have experienced this too, or have something to say about it that might explain it, it might help me a little bit. But what's going on when I look through LVPOs and microprisms is when I look through the back of the sight, the sight picture that I get feels more like reality than reality. And what I mean by that is if I take this and I aim downrange and I look through the back of my sight, this looks more realistic than if I were to drop the firearm and then just look downrange. I'm not getting a zoom on it. And when I look through LVPOs on 1x, I'm experiencing the same thing, but it just like looks cleaner and more realistic than when I just look downrange myself. And I shoot with both eyes open, so when I'm looking through the optic, my right eye has that, oh, like this is reality, and my left eye feels like this is the weird part, like everything here. And it's not just that I'm getting more focus through my right eye. When I close my left eye, it still feels more realistic than when I drop the firearm and look with just my right eye. So if you guys know what's going on with that, that would help me out a lot. I would imagine that it has something to do with it's correcting some sort of distortion in my eye, like the rounded lens or something is fixing a problem with my eye. But as far as I know, I have perfect or better than perfect vision. So yeah, let me know if you guys have experienced that. I think that's kind of an oddity. But I do recommend it. It's very crisp. You can easily zero it. It functions just like any other optic. It's got a left, right, up, down, zero. It's not magnified at all. That's going to shoot very much like your irons, but it's easier to acquire the target. It's elevated, so you've got that nice, if you're putting your cheek on the buttstock, your eye is in line with the optic. You don't have to try to get down and see the irons, which is a little hard with Ear Pro on. Okay, so we've talked about the optics, we've talked about everything. The barrel. The barrel's a 16-inch barrel. It is threaded, so it comes with a thread protector, which has flat sides, so you can easily take it off. And this is nice because you can put a brake or a compensator or a suppressor on here pretty easily. And it just kind of fits the aesthetic or the vibe of the firearm if you're trying to go for this modernized look to be able to add your modern components to it. Okay, so now that we're talking about like vibe a little bit, when I bought this, I was kind of looking for like a space cowboy-y feel to this firearm so that I could take this to the range with my Colt Python and kind of feel like a modern cowboy for the day. Is there a place in a modern world for a lever action? I think so. I've seen lots of videos where people can function and fire lever actions almost as fast as a semi-auto. There's some really good shooters out there that can just rack the lever as many times as they want, and they functions just fine. So I think that if you had this at your home and you've got a large caliber like a 357 and you were using it for self-defense, it's perfectly fine. It's going to function well on you because it's a lever action, kind of like a pump action. It's going to cycle well because you're manually doing it, and you'll know if there's an issue because you won't be able to get the lever in position if there is an issue. So I think it still has a place in this world. 8+1 rounds is not the highest capacity, but you can get bandoliers, you can load rounds into the loading gate, and you can load as you go kind of deal, sort of like a pump action shotgun. I think that you'll see more people using lever actions if they're like using it for range use, like they're actually ranchers that need to go out and check on their cattle or something, and they need a large cartridge to deal with things like cougars or wolves or something. This is a good option. I don't do that. I don't live in that world, but I imagine that having a 357 is probably better than having a 5.56 for those kind of things. In certain parts of the world, obviously, ranches are going to have more to worry from people than wild animals, so maybe 5.56 is your option. But 357 16-inch barrel gives you the option to shoot it at close range and long range, and a high-powered round with a lot of stopping power. So keep this in mind if you are looking to get into the lever action world. I think this is a great option. If you do see a Marlin 357 out in the wild and it's the Dark Series and you want that modern look, definitely give those a look. I think they're high-quality firearms. I really wish I could have gotten one. And definitely don't just brush off lever actions just because there are semi-autos out in the world now. So anyways, if you have any questions that I didn't answer in this video, drop a comment and I will respond. And definitely let me know if you've experienced that feeling that reality feels more real looking through a micro prism or an LVPO. I don't get that feeling, by the way, on red dots or holographics or iron sights, but I definitely get that feeling with micro prisms and LVPOs. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys.